Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to today's show. It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I am going to go ahead and get this one out because probably going to be doing a little traveling this week, so try to get a jump on things. You know, I do try to do them Sunday evening if I can, but a lot of times they are Monday. And of course, I don't officially release the show until Monday. But it is just such a nice day. You know, I carved a spoon, I went to Mass. On my way out, I encountered some yucca plants that were growing kind of feral. And of course, I always carry a pocket knife, so I pulled out my Swiss, chopped off a couple dozen with one slice of the, what do you call them? I guess they're fronds, but they're like, you know, it's the yucca hostada or something. What is it? The Spanish bayonet plant? The leaves form long, sword-shaped fronds, I guess, leaves with a sharp thorn at the end. And yucca is wonderful. It is somewhat edible. I kind of find that debatable. Um, the plant contains saponins. Okay, saponins give the flowers, the flowering stalks, if you were to eat them, a bitter, soapy taste, and in large amounts could be quite toxic. In fact, it's used as a fish toxin, but that's completely different on its effect in terms of its effect for a fish as opposed to the human body. You can grab a few yucca raw in a salad. They're okay. I don't jump up and down about them. When they're in season, I will grab a few because they're not bad or anything. And I figure the greater variety of plants you eat, the more nutrition you get. The flowering spikes that come up from the plant, I guess you would call them shoots. They're almost like pink or orange in early spring, and people say they can be cooked like asparagus and eaten. I still tend to find them soapy. That soapy saponin could be very important in a survival situation because if you get enough of it and you kind of suds it up and get it in concentrated in some water, you can drop it in a pond or even maybe a slow-moving river, and it will prevent the fish that come in contact with it from absorbing oxygen through their gills. So it knocks them out and they float to the surface. That's totally illegal, obviously, for obvious reasons. But Native Americans did it, early Americans did it, and if you were in a survival situation you had to eat, I'm not telling anybody. It just doesn't damage the meat of the fish at all. It's just an easy way to harvest some fish. You just scoop them right up. Well, the other nice thing about the yucca plant is that those fronds or leaves or whatever they are full of fibers. And it's very easy. I just, like I said, I grabbed a handful of them, took them home, put them on my chopping block where I carved my spoons and grabbed my little 3-pound sledgehammer. They're easier. They're better ways to do it. Usually they're kind of pounded between two smooth stones, but I didn't have two smooth stones. I grabbed my hammer and I'd put them on a chopping block, pound it out until the leaves all bruised, Then take a dull knife. I used a butter knife. There are better options on that as well, but I'm out of town and I used what I had on hand. Yes, I travel with a chopping block to carve spoons, and a 3 pound hammer, and several knives. Well, I like to harvest things when I see them and use them. I like to make spoons. I like to carve all kinds of things, really, little figures to all, I mean, you name it. At some point, I'll probably begin. I'll set up a little Etsy shop or something, and if you're interested in those, you can check them out. I like to make baskets. I like to make fiber. Well, anyway, I pounded these out, scraped them with a dull knife, twisted it up. I don't even know, a dozen rolls of cordage, and they're now and the little scraps I made, just a fresh green cordage cord. I'll show you how to do that at some point. It's not hard. It's pretty very useful. My gosh, is it useful? And I hung them up and they're drying, and I don't know if I'm going to boil them before use or not. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with these yet. I just couldn't pass up this great fiber plant. Yucca does grow in Linville, in Avery County, where I live, but it's nowhere near as common as it is in the Sandhills, where I'm visiting this weekend, with all these, 95, 98-degree temperatures and pop-up thunderstorms and all the craziness down here. Um, but you know what? I gotta honestly admit, I don't want to be home right now. Yeah, between 4th of July and Highland Games weekend up on Grandfather Mountain, the traffic is almost as bad as rush hour in Washington, D.C. And anytime the traffic's not bad, there are 10,000 motorcycles roaring down, blasting it out as loud as they can go. And yeah, I get you guys have fun doing that, but it kind of makes our lives hell. I mean, those of us that actually live there would prefer if, you took some roads that weren't in front of residential property, maybe stay on the parkway, and or didn't, you know, hit the throttle as hard as you can at every opportunity and make as much noise as you possibly can. It really, you're coming through it, between 3 and 5 a.m. a lot of times, and then late at night, 11 to 12, and you really, I get you're having a good time, but you make it really difficult for the people that actually live there. Tourists are an issue as well. Tourists can make it difficult, but yeah, those motorcycles are pretty dang loud, and I know y'all giggle about that and have all kinds of fun, but how would you like if someone came outside your bedroom window at 5 a.m. and cranked up a leaf blower and just turned it on and off and on and off so you couldn't sleep for about 5 or 6 or 7 days in a row? You'd probably get a little annoyed. Yeah, you probably would. So I take this time to be off the mountain. While everyone else is enjoying being up there in the cool mountain air and enjoying the fresh greenery, um, those of us who can get the hell out of there because we can't sleep. Our roads are completely tied up. The price of everything goes through the roof. Gas will go up by $1 or $2 a gallon, usually in the summertime. Um, Got to stand in line just to buy groceries or grab a burger, and it's just like a lot of rude, loud people up on vacation who literally do not give a crap about anybody else around them because they're there to have fun. Well, if you're listening to this, I hope you had a good time. I really do. And I hope you come back at another time of year and turn off your vehicle, whatever you happen to be driving, and get out in the woods and enjoy some peace and quiet. Because that's actually why we live here. Yeah, to an extent, our economy depends on tourism, but most of us would really be happy if you just get the hell out, honestly. So anyway, now let's get on with today's show. And let me give just the complete opposite message from what I just gave. Um, there is a big conference coming up, and I'm going to be one of the very charitable Christian presenters at the Christian Herbalist Conference. I want you to know all about this. And yeah, it's a little ironic after telling everybody off. I'm going to tell you to come to the Christian Herbalist Guild, but hey, I'll promote this for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at least. I think it's going to be really good. The Christian Herbalist Guild is a very new organization. It's organized by let me see if I can get this name right, Avramidis, Vas Avramidis. Well, I was invited to be a speaker on August 5, and I'm going to be giving my presentation on the history of Christian herbal medicine. As you know, I've written a whole book on it, so it'll be really good, and I think it's a bunch of good folks. I think you enjoy this. Other presenters will be Charles Riffenberg, Stephen DeBasantian, and Susan Shires. I think that's right. Shires or Shears? I'm thinking Shires. Suzanne. I totally screwed your name up, didn't I? Suzanne, if you're hearing this, please let me know if it's Shires. I think it is. Suzanne Shires. I've read her stuff. I don't know exactly how to pronounce her name. Great group of people, not including myself. Okay, I'll do my best, but you know what to expect if you see me doing a video presentation. I am going to tell you all about the history, Christian history of herbal medicine, and it's going to get into the weeds quite a bit, but it's going to be good. And this is a good group. It's a good online herbal school as well. I want you to know that. As I've said so many times, herbal medicine really has a deep, rich Christian history. The way the church spread throughout Europe and beyond was especially the Benedictines, but other monastic groups going out into the middle of nowhere, into pagan countries, and founding monasteries that had free hospitals. And they grew gardens, herb gardens, and they treated people for free. That legacy of Christian herbal medicine given charitably for free to everybody is at least as important in the spread of Christianity from a very small geographic area to the whole world as, preaching and evangelization or the printing of the Bible. How better do you show someone Christian charity? I mean, preach a sermon, read a Bible passage to them, or bring a sick person in and nurse them back to health and heal them and feed them. That really went a long ways. So, we'll get big into that. I want you to check out this group. It's ChristianHerbalistGuild.org. ChristianHerbalistGuild.org. And if you want to see the conference, just put a / and the word conference after that. So I'll put the link. I'll probably put the logo in the show notes. I hope you all show up. It's going to be fun. This is a subject I know a lot about. So if you're interested at all in Christian herbal medicine, I hope you'll check out my presentation. Now let's get into the day's recipe. I'm going to keep it short because, covering a lot of ground today. I've already wandered far afield. But, I grew up with a lot of Jewish folks, and they made these potato pancakes that were sort of like hash browns with onions and such, and they called them latkes. You probably have a similar dish in your culture. Now, I know it goes by many different names. There's a name for this in Polish. There's a name for it in Ukrainian. Germans make these. I think probably most every culture that has potatoes makes some form of potato pancake. So what got me thinking about this, it's not, well, it is somewhat seasonal. I mean, the potatoes are starting to come in. There's my white potatoes, the new potatoes are really coming in very nicely. I love mashed potatoes. And last night I made my signature mashed potatoes, okay? I'll just go ahead and give you this completely non-vegetarian mashed potato dish. This is the mashed potato dish to upset all vegans, and it's the very best thing. So get some potatoes. I don't care if they're russets, Yukon Golds. I actually prefer Yukon Gold. White potato, red potato, get some potatoes. I don't peel my potatoes unless there's a bad spot. I just cut it off. If there's an eye, I cut it off. I don't peel my potatoes, okay? I like the taste of the peel. It's up to you. If you want to peel them, peel them. I don't care. Chop them up into about even-sized pieces. You know, you want your potatoes to boil evenly. The biggest mistake people make is boiling their potatoes too long or letting them sit in the water too long. Um, if they're cooked evenly, they're going to if they're cut evenly, they're going to cook evenly. And they should all be done at about the same time. And you don't have as much danger of gluey mashed potatoes. When they're overcooked, they just get a bad texture. And it really usually happens for just leaving them sitting in the water after they're cooked, but you can avoid that. Take your potato, just chop it up into, say, I don't know, tablespoon-sized cubes, 2 tablespoon-sized cubes, whatever, as long as they're even in size, to some rough extent. Put them in cold salted water, bring to a boil. Cook till done. You can stick a fork in there. Now, meanwhile, while they're cooking, along with the potatoes you put in the water, grab a couple cloves of garlic. Just, grab a head of garlic, pull off a couple cloves. You don't even have to peel them. Just throw them in there with the potatoes. Let the garlic cook with the potatoes and salt. That is the biggest secret to making the best mashed potatoes. Cook garlic with your potatoes. When they're done, drain them immediately. Do not let them just sit around in hot water, okay? Get them off the stove, drain them immediately. The garlic will slip right out of the skin, right into the potatoes. At this point, you can let them sit, if you want to, but I just go ahead and into that same pot, even before I mash up my potatoes and garlic, I put in some bacon grease, some butter, some milk, some mayonnaise, some chives, some parsley, and then I just go to town and mash everything up. Oh, and some cheese. I forgot the cheese. Yes, I'll put in some grated Parmesan or grated Pecorino Romano, Asiago, whatever I got. So this is a very fatty, very rich mashed potatoes. Those are my signature mashed potatoes. You may think, why would you put mayonnaise in mashed potatoes? You ever go into a restaurant and the mashed potatoes just taste kind of unique, and it's like, why can't I do this at home? You know what the secret is? A spoonful of mayonnaise. Yeah, that's an old restaurant trick. Really good. A little celery salt is excellent, but I love the chives, I love the parsley, garlic, and the fat. It's just fantastic. You can finish those, sprinkle the crumbled up bacon and maybe a little more grated cheese over the top. Hey, you can't go wrong with it. That's a good mashed potatoes, I'm telling you. So, I had those mashed potatoes last night with some fried chicken and, a few other things. And this morning, I got up and I thought, I got leftover mashed potatoes. I'm going to make potato pancakes. This is one of the best things I know. And, if you actually have leftover mashed potatoes, I have been known to eat the whole pot myself. But if you have leftover mashed potatoes, I'm going to give you kind of a ballpark recipe because I don't know how much you got, right? You could have a cup of mashed potatoes. You could have a pot of mashed potatoes. I don't know. You want to just add enough flour and an egg, beaten egg, blend it together to bring it together into something you can form into essentially a pancake. That's it. So say I got, I don't know, a couple of cups of mashed potatoes. I'm going to do maybe 2 tablespoons of flour. I would, on this, usually I like all-purpose flour. I'm going to use self-rising because I want it to puff a little bit. If you don't use self-rising, you can use all-purpose flour. You can add baking powder and baking soda. You can do that if you want. But, I keep a little Southern biscuit flour around, and, no big deal. 2 tablespoons flour, approximately, depending on how much you got. An egg. Beat it all in there together. Make your pancakes. Fry them up golden brown. They'll rise. They'll be puffy. They'll be soft. They'll be pillowy. Absolutely delicious. This morning I had them with bacon and grated cheddar. A little green onion. Does it get any better than that? I mean, honestly, seriously, does it get any better than that? I don't think so. That's good stuff. You got a garden fresh tomato sliced up with a little salt and pepper, and hey, I'm good to go. Good to go. Just give me a cup of coffee, and yeah, I'm happy. All right, so now let's get into today's herb. And today's herb is an herb you're not going to hear a lot in modern herbal medicine, but it's one of the officinalis. It's one of those that were in the official apothecaries of those monasteries that were providing healthcare to people throughout the Middle Ages and beyond. It's Speedwell. Was one of the essential herbs of herbal medicine of the Roman Empire. In fact, wherever the Romans went, they planted Speedwell. I don't know why Speedwell has fallen out of common use. It's just kind of forgotten. Speedwell or Veronica officinalis, which always reminds me of the Elvis Costello song, Veronica. Very sad song. Don't like to think about it. Yeah, really unique song in the 1980s, but even more unique is the herb. Is included in the Great Swedish Bitters. So I actually use it on a daily basis, and it's one that I like to grow. It's a very useful herb. On its own, though, I haven't used it a lot. Like, I don't make a Veronica tincture, a Speedwell tincture. Occasionally, I'll toss it in with something else. After doing the research for this show, maybe I need to pay a little more attention to it, honestly. Uh, I guess I went through about a dozen of the more modern herbals on my shelf, modern herbal books, and maybe 2 dozen, honestly. And I only found one book that even mentioned it. This is how it's kind of fallen out of use, right? It was the 1970s Rodale Herb book. Great book, by the way. Rodale, so the leading publisher on organic gardening. Their, it was the 1960s version. Their 1960s version has a sort of a drab olive green or maybe sage green color. I'm thinking more olive green, actually. And it's great. It's great. They did another version of it in the 80s, which was not so great. So if you want a good Rodale herb book, and that one is really good, actually, look for the 60s through early 70s edition in that ugly green cover. It's just called the Rodale Herb Book, but so are their later ones. And you can probably grab one used off of eBay or Amazon for like $3. I mean, in total, you're going to love this book. Excellent addition to your library. They said that there's just a brief mention, and even in that book, which is somewhat encyclopedic, they said it was tonic, alterative, and diuretic, used in coughs, catarrh, and for skin diseases. Well, tonic generally means it helps digestion, but it can mean it strengthens and healthens, I guess, the entire system. But in this case, they said alterative, which is actually what that means. An alterative herb is an herb that gradually brings people into optimal health or back to health from being sick. And diuretic, of course, means removes excess fluids. Used in coughs, catarrh, which is congestion, mucus congestion, especially the lungs and sinuses, and for skin diseases. So that was it. I mean, herbal books written after 1950, and I think I even went back. Yeah, I think I went back to like 1900. Not a lot on Veronica officinalis. So this is one we have to dig around a little bit for. And so I went to Dioscorides, knowing that he was a Greek herbalist. Of course, Greek herbalism was adopted by the Romans, and the Romans seem to have taken this herb wherever they went. I figure I'll go back to the Greeks, and Dioscorides, of course, did include Speedwell. Speedwell, by the way, was a blessing. Godspeed, essentially. Good luck. Safe journeys. That's how important it was to them. I mean, it's like sage, salve, be well. Speedwell was kind of along the same lines. Veronica officinalis. And while he did write of this plant, he also wrote of another plant called Germander Speedwell, which is entirely different. And he seems to have mixed the two up. That was Veronica chamadris, I guess. Chamadris. Related plants. But, I'm going to get a little more specific in it. So Went up from the Greeks and Germans to went up from the Greeks and Romans to, of course, German folk medicine, because who is more precise than the Germans? If there's one thing the Germans are known for, it is being extremely literal and precise. I grew up with a lot of Germans, love the food. I can definitely say they do not have the best sense of humor. You will tell something like a pun or a little joke that's supposed to be ironic, and they're like, "Why is that funny? I do not understand." Anyway, uh, so Brother Aloysius wrote specifically of Veronica officinalis. It was used in monastic and German folk medicine for indigestion, migraine, complaint of blood in the head, congestion of blood in the head. That's a tricky one. Congestion of blood in the head, sometimes referred to headaches, migraines. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think there's a specific medical diagnosis for congestion of blood in the head. I think that probably goes back to catarrh, probably more like sinus pressure. Okay, so if it's sinus pressure or it could be a headache, take it with a grain of salt, right? Asthma, spitting of blood, that would be like from tuberculosis, dry cough, cancer, chronic chest complaints, chronic catarrh or congestion, and I think in this regard he's talking of the lungs because he puts it together with chest complaints, consumption, lung ulcers, so he's talking lungs at this point, eczema, itching, mucus, dizziness, foul stomach, stomach ache, stomach cramps, bladder complaints, hematuria, gravel, kidney pain, blockage of the liver and spleen, scabies, difficult urination, mucus in the respiratory organs, sores, ulcers, congestions, and chronic skin complaints. So, given that panacea, this list that would make the herb like a panacea, you can see why the Romans would have taken it and planted it in any country they invaded and conquered. Uh, that's a medicine cabinet in a plant, and given that, it's kind of hard to understand how it fell out of use. Maria Trebin, speaking of the Romans, wrote that when the Romans conquered Germanic lands, they learned from the old Teutons, 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 I guess, about the great value of this much esteemed herb. So she's saying that the Romans got it from the Germans. I don't know. Maybe they did. Who knows? I know the Romans planted it in England, so we can go that far, whether they got it from Germany first. The Romans, as I read in an old herbal, must have been convinced of this herb's great value. If they wanted to compliment the acquaintance of a friend, they said he had as many good qualities as the highly esteemed Speedwell. This saying I remembered one day when a gentleman told me of his high cholesterol in his blood. He had been to the hospital several times. I recommended Speedwell, 2 cups of tea per day. She was a tea herbalist, not much into tinctures. My pleasure was great when 6 months later he told me that the doctors were surprised when there was no high level of cholesterol, when shortly ago they had given him a checkup. This traditional herb is a favorite addition to teas that cleanse the blood, and together with fresh stinging nettle tops, it heals chronic eczema. Weak people tolerate it as a stomatic of gentle action. It also stimulates digestion. Fluids and mucus in the stomach and intestinal disorders are eliminated. Speedwell is efficacious for old dry bronchitis, for chest complaints. A tea is made of an equal proportions mixtures of lungwort, coltsfoot, plantain, and speedwell, sweetened with honey or raw sugar. I would like to point out that speedwell has a great medicinal value for nervousness caused by mental overexertion. 1 cup drunk before going to bed, through its soothing effect, is highly beneficial. The Abbe Kunzel, that's Father Kunzel, who, Jolanta Wittib and I wrote the modern version of his herbal, which was published around 1900. She said he recommended this soothing tea to people who have to work a lot with their head. It brings good memory. It disperses dizziness. Mixed with celery roots, it rectifies weak nerves as well as depression. Even for jaundice and gravel in the bladder, rheumatic and gout pain of the limbs, Speedwell is very effective. A priest relates, my memory lapses disappeared surprisingly after drinking tea prepared of equal amounts Speedwell and horsetail, 2 cups per day, and that's equisetum, not an actual horse's tail, it's a plant called horsetail. I had become uncertain and worried when during sermons I forgot important words. The herbs have helped very quickly. For jaundice, liver, and spleen disorders, I recommend the following mixture: 50 grams dandelion root, 25 grams wild chicory flowers, 25 grams woodruff, and 50 grams Speedwell. 2 cups of this unsweetened tea are sipped throughout the day. The fresh juice prepared from the flowering plants is recommended for chronic skin disorders, especially for eczema. 1 teaspoon of the juice taken 3 times a day of Speedwell. In old herbals, it was praised as a wound herb for all inflamed, non-healing wounds, especially wounds near the shin bone. The wound is washed in a decoction of Speedwell, and then compresses made from the freshly prepared infusion are applied, wrapped up warmly, and left on overnight. People who suffer from rheumatism and gout should try the easily prepared Speedwell tincture. This tincture is used externally or internally. Be sure to drink a tea prepared from freshly picked herbs for a period every year. Speedwell not only prevents arteriosclerosis, it gives the body new elasticity through its purifying action. Therefore, my request is take my advice. Maria Trevin obviously believed very strongly in Speedwell. But, when I say this herb has fallen out of favor, when I say this herb has fallen out of favor, my go-to, my quick, pull up a website to see what the current uses are for an herb is Plants for a Future, the plant database, I think is what's also called. They only said, very simply, the leaves and roots are alterative, astringent, mildly diuretic, mildly expectorant, stomachic, and tonic. They have been employed in the treatment of pectoral and nephritic complaints, hemorrhages, skin disease, the treatment of wounds. The plant is considered to be obsolete in modern herbalism. Think about that. Plants for Future, the best database of current use, says Speedwell is obsolete in modern use. What? Well, it's obviously a useful plant. Why would it be obsolete? People just forgot about it. The Physician's Desk reference for herbal medicine lists Speedwell as effective in the treatment of ulcers and wounds. Under unproven uses, it states, Speedwell preparations are used for diseases and discomfort of the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and lower urinary tracts. It is also used for the liver and kidneys and to treat gout and rheumatic complaints. In addition, Speedwell is used internally to improve metabolism. It is blood purifying for nervous agitation. Externally, the herb is used for as a gargle for inflammation of the oral and pharyngeal mucosa, in the promotion of wound healing, chronic skin complaints, itching, and sweating feet. They say no health hazard or side effects are known in conjunction with proper administration of designated therapeutic dosages. So, I was left to ponder why such a useful and safe herb fell out of use. If, as Miss Trevin said, Speedwell came into use by Rome through the Germanic tradition, perhaps the answer could be found in the Old English herbals, since so much of their tradition derived from the monastic medicine that spread through Europe after the fall of Rome. Gerard listed and took the care to draw 4 types of Speedwell, but listed all of their virtues as the decoction of Veronica drunk soldereth and healeth all fresh wounds. It means it heals wounds. Soldereth be like soldering metal. Obviously. Cleanseth the blood from all corruption, and is good to be drunk for the kidneys and against scurviness and foul spreading tetters and consuming and fretting sores, the smallpox and the measles. The water of Veronica distilled with wine and redistilled so often that the liquor becomes a reddish color, prevaileth against old cough, the dryness of the lungs, and all ulcers and ulcerations of the same. My word, it's a good thing I did not become a Shakespearean actor. This stuff's hard to pronounce. I love to read Shakespeare, always have. I cannot imagine trying to speak that as if it were normal. But they did, so good for them. Culpeper, about 100 years later, who, always had an astrological association with this herb, says Venus covers this plant. Usually means it's a soothing or gentle herb, sort of feminine, right? Okay. And he said, is reckoned among the vulnerary plants, means it heals wounds, both used inwardly and outwardly. It is likewise pectoral, or good for the chest, and good for coughs and consumption, and is helpful against the stone and strangury. That would be kidney and bladder stones and retaining fluid. As also against pestilential fevers. An infusion of the leaves drank constantly in the manner of tea is greatly recommended as a provocative to venery and a strengthener. It has been called a cure for barrenness, taken a long time in this manner. So he believed it strengthened the female reproductive system, probably another reason he called it an herb of Venus, and could help make a woman fertile. I don't know. Certainly, I'm not finding this in other sources, but who knows? Miss Grieve, 1931, said Speedwell is a native of the Old World, naturalized in the eastern United States, and grows in open grassy places. And yes, you will find it occasionally as a wild plant, or I guess a feral plant. It was much valued by our ancestors. She goes through quite a bit of history, and I think we've already covered enough history already. As under medicinal actions and uses, she says, this species of Veronica retained a place among our recognized remedies until a comparatively late period, and is still employed in herbal medicine. She doesn't know why it fell out of use either. She's just saying it once was popular, and now people don't think of it. But she says its leaves possess astringency and bitterness. Among the Welsh peasantry, great virtues are attributed to Speedwell. The plant has diaphoretic, alterative, diuretic, expectorant, and tonic properties, and was formerly employed in pectoral and nephritic complaints, hemorrhages, diseases of the skin, and treatments of wounds. Modern herbalists still consider that an infusion of the dry plant is useful in coughs, catarrh or congestion, etc., and is an effective remedy in skin diseases. So, it seems I can find no reason why such a healthful herb fell out of use. It's also a very pretty plant, very nice wildflower. It would look very nice in your garden. Maybe get some seeds. Let's get it going again. I think this is one that the world needs now. Which of course brings to mind a line from a band from North Carolina. I think they were from Chapel Hill or Raleigh. Uncle Cracker. They had a hit in the 90s. What the world needs now is another folk singer like I Need a Hole in the Head. Well, I'm not sure if I agree with that. But the world does need more healthful herbs, as they used to say. And as this one is pretty enough to grow in the flower garden and quite useful and by all accounts exceedingly safe. I don't see any reason why it doesn't belong in all of our gardens, folk singers and holes in the head aside. So y'all have a great week. Eat some potato pancakes. Sign up for the Christian Herbalist Guild Conference and see if you can find some seeds for Veronica officinalis, and I will talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.